Don't recklessly use generative AI tools as a replacement for your writers. Don't do that. Do use generative AI for creative purposes, for improving your writing, for enhancing your writing, for adding ideas. Like I think we all know by now, like these tools are incredible. It's really just about when you're replacing the brand voice and the content with generative AI, and when the user can start to feel like, this doesn't feel like a human wrote it. That's, I think, when you get into really problematic areas.
This is The Anonymous Marketer, a podcast where we tackle the biggest questions from the B2B marketing community. But instead of bringing on guests for a quick chat, every question comes from an anonymous source. These are the questions B2B marketers have, but are afraid to ask. Let's start the conversation.
Hello, and welcome to The Anonymous Marketer. I'm your host, Kirsti Lang, and today we are tucking into the magic and the madness that is the Google algorithm. Lily Ray, Vice President of SEO Strategy and Research at Amsive, is our guest in the hot seat. Lily, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I came across Lily's work in the Women in SEO Slack community, which I joined fairly recently, largely because I was looking for emotional support after Google's latest update. And my friend Lily is more knowledgeable about SEO than any other human I've ever come across. She is a pretty big deal on Twitter and also a DJ, which basically means she's far too cool for me. I just really appreciate your time, Lily. I know we were just chatting about how you were on a podcast right before this talking about the same stuff. So I'm going to do my best to ask you some interesting questions that hopefully you haven't been asked already today.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do it.
Alrighty. So before we get into the question that we're tackling this episode, I would love it if you would share a little bit more about your career and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I've been doing SEO about over 14 years now. It's the only real career I've ever had, aside from being a musician. I started doing SEO when I was about 20. I was still in college. I went to NYU, and I found it in, I want to say, like late junior year. I found a side, SEO job when I was still studying politics and Spanish. And I've been doing it ever since. So I grew up in a very techie household. My dad and my brother are very much tech guys, engineers, software engineers, and web developers. And I really just kind of like fell in love with SEO right away. I felt like it was the right combination of skills from like both a technical and creative and content and marketing and analytical standpoint. And so I dove into some in-house positions earlier in my career, and then I started doing agency SEO over 12 years ago. So that's where I've mostly been since then.
I love that. I love your point about SEO kind of being an art and a science. And I think that is why I don't know, I feel like I'm having a renewed I'm falling in love with SEO again right now. We were just talking about before we started recording how I am kind of the main cog in an SEO refresh content engine at Buffer that we're tackling right now. And the intricacies and the things I didn't know about SEO have been so fun to learn and also really humbling as well. But there is an incredible sense of satisfaction when you fit the pieces of the puzzle together, right? When you get that right, it's creativity and it's science, and it's just, yeah, I love it and also hate it, which is confusing.
It's like a lot of different skills at the same time. I was just going to say, there's so many different types of SEO and like subtypes within SEO. So it's very hard to be good at all the different areas of SEO at the same time. No, that's
true. That's completely true. And I feel like there will always be gaps, no matter how, I thought having worked in various content roles for, about the same time as you, I have really just skimmed the surface of SEO. And now that I'm kind of diving deeper into it on this project, it's been very humbling to understand how little I actually do know. And I'm going to have to rethink my SEO skills that I have on my CV right now. Well, after this project, hopefully I will be living up to what I've been selling this far. Alrighty. So if you are new to the show, a little bit about how the Anonymous Marketer works for any new listeners. For every episode, we take a question from an anonymous marketer, hence the name, something that they might feel not super comfortable asking in a public forum, a problem that they don't really want to discuss with their peers. And so everything is submitted to us through marketersindemand.com/anonymous. So if you have a question like this one, you can head over there and I will bring on an expert like Lily to help solve your problem, hopefully. The question for today is, just when you think you've got a handle on SEO, Google makes a fundamental change to its algorithm. What's your advice for keeping up or just rolling with the punches? Lily, I want to dig into the specifics of this new update, but also talk a little bit more generally about these algorithm changes to give folks some tools and ideas to help them kind of cope when the next one rolls around. Because I've heard there are whispers of a big one. The big one is coming. So yeah, let's start in the weeds. I thought maybe we could kick off with Google's helpful content update, or do you think we need to go further back to answer this question well?
Yeah, I think we need to go further back for sure. I know a lot of people just started thinking about Google's algorithm updates for the first time because this might be their first experience with one.
Yeah.
But for those of us that have been doing this for a while, it's certainly not our first experience with them. And what happens over time is the more of them that you experience, the more that it informs how you approach SEO going forward. And especially for people like me who work at an SEO agency and have worked at an SEO agency for so many years, you multiply the number of client situations and website situations with the history and with the cycles of SEO and algorithm updates and everything, and you start to see the patterns and you start to realize that, I say this a lot, but SEO is as much about being defensive or risk averse as it is about just always trying to find the biggest SEO opportunity and drive as much traffic as possible, because a lot of the very aggressive traffic driving approaches that might work for a short period can get you in some type of trouble with SEO later on.
Yeah.
So we try to do this in a really scalable way that doesn't get the sites in trouble, and you don't always know if it will get the site in trouble, but when you do this long enough, you can kind of anticipate that's probably not going to work for a very long time.
Yeah.
Which makes things tricky.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, because I think you've just perfectly described me as, having someone who's kind of been on the periphery of SEO and now really tucking into it. I feel like I'm just kind of I feel really similar to how this person feels, honestly, like just kind of being knocked by the waves and figuring out how to swim every time a change comes around. So with this latest update, I mean, you said we should start a little bit further back, or can we talk a little bit about Google's helpful content update and how that's changed things in the current landscape?
Yeah. So the helpful content update and the system that Google introduced in 2022 it was a new ranking system that they introduced with a new set of criteria that was very specific and very much went after like a certain category of sites in a big way. So that's not unprecedented on Google for them to do something like that, but it is, I would say, more rare than like what we see every year since Google started, which is big core algorithm updates, big changes to their main ranking systems. But like sometimes, and this is not the first time, Google has to go after a certain, whether it's a spam tactic that a lot of sites are using, or it could, in some cases, be a very specific niche that they're going after. For example, there was the payday loans update like 6 or 7 years ago. So sometimes Google needs to launch specific updates that do specific things, which is the helpful content update was one of those. But now it's the helpful content ranking system was baked into Google's core ranking algorithms. So we see core updates multiple times per year, every year. We've seen that forever. But what makes this one tricky is now it's been baked into that core ranking system. So we're not going to get the level of granularity that we got before, like knowing specifically what's hitting the site or not. And this is something we see a lot. Google actually has a lot of different ranking systems that it's slowly but surely integrated into the core ranking system. So you get less clarity about what is the particular system or systems that have affected your site over time. And it's harder to decouple exactly what happened.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the updates that we get are deliberately obtuse. I don't know if that's just me reading into things too much, but it is very difficult. You know, they do kind of provide information, but it's very difficult to understand and extrapolate what that means for you and your site.
Yeah, it's really tricky for Google because, and like I was just talking about this earlier today with another podcast, but Google has to be really careful with how it communicates about these updates. And sometimes what we see happening is not exactly what they said to do or not to do. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of right now with the helpful content update is a lot of people feel like whatever guidance or communications they put out are not consistent with what we're actually seeing in the wild. But this is something I always try to explain, you know, this is the job of an SEO professional is we have to, yeah, we're always trying to reverse engineer what's actually happening and make decisions based on that. So, you know, if the outcome of the helpful content update is such that you feel like this is really unfair and you have a lot less Google traffic than you used to, unfortunately, this is what happens with SEO. This is what happens with Google's market dominance for many, many years. It's not the first time, you know, big brands have gotten in trouble with Google's algorithm updates multiple times in the last 20 years. They have to do something different. You either have to pivot your strategy, you have to eliminate the thing that was causing problems on your site, or you have to think about getting traffic from other places that aren't Google. And that's the job of an SEO is to like really think about what's happening in the current landscape, what are the current challenges, and how can we kind of adapt and thrive in this new environment.
So what are the common kind of patterns you're seeing, if you're able to kind of talk broadly about the work that you do with your clients? What are things that you've needed to tweak with this latest update?
I think first of all, the helpful content update didn't affect most of the clients that we work with. I mean, you know, the loudest voices in the room right now in the SEO space are people that got hit by the helpful content update. And I get it because a lot of them are, you know, bloggers and publishers and people that have been getting a lot of SEO advice online and sharing their ideas very publicly. And this is like this whole community of the internet where people are kind of like building these sites in public and exchanging ideas. But I think what people don't really realize is that there's a lot of other companies that do SEO as well. And they weren't hit by the helpful content update. This is most companies. You know, the vast majority of the clients that we work with were not affected by the helpful content update. So it doesn't really change what most of our clients are doing, you know, but it does absolutely change things for the websites that were impacted. And we do work with some of them. I took it upon myself and our team to help various small publishers that were hit by the helpful content update. And I understand the frustration completely. It's very challenging for those sites. And I know one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest complaints that a lot of people have right now is that they feel that what's true for small sites is not the same rules that apply to the bigger sites. And I don't even know how to respond to that. I think it's true that a lot of these sites were affected for things that they didn't even know that they were doing wrong in the first place, which makes things really challenging.
Are you able to share what kinds of things that had an impact?
Yeah. I think, you know, working on and looking at the helpful content update for months, to me, it's really clear. I think at this point, it's pretty clear to a lot of people, but, you know, the vast majority of affected websites are relatively small, independent, niche blogs that make money through ads and affiliate links. That's my blanket generalization for that update. I think there's probably exceptions, but I've been digging pretty deep into this update since day one. There aren't a lot of exceptions. I really think that's the majority of who got hit. You know, sites that offer some kind of core product or have an e-commerce component or have an app or have like a community or have something that they sell, like usually weren't hit by this update. You know, if people see exceptions, I'm happy to look at them, but it's just, I haven't really seen those types of sites get hit. So, you know, these smaller publishers, a lot of them are travel bloggers. A lot of them are recipe bloggers. You know, a lot of them do product reviews. They do tech reviews. They talk about gaming. They talk about this and this. I think it was a bit of a gold rush last year and the year before for these sites to make a lot of money and get a lot of traffic on Google. So when you have gold rushes in the SEO space, Google sees them and doesn't always love them. So we're seeing now Google crack down on a lot of these ways that people were making a lot of money. And I do think there was a lot of innocent sites that got kind of caught in the crossfire and shouldn't have been affected the way that they were. But for whatever reason, Google probably thought that those sites generally were not offering the best experience to Google searchers, and they took action.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah, I think ultimately, whenever there's an update, it always kind of seems to come back to leading with value and treating your readers or, your customers or leads or whoever it is you're trying to capture the attention of, like they're humans and not writing for the algorithm. I think that's a trap that so many marketers and content marketers fall into, and there's nothing worse to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really tricky because, and I literally talk to people every day about this because they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to make their websites so SEO optimized, but they need to pay the bills and they need to pay their writers. And so they needed to make more money. And so they got that money through Google traffic. And so they exploited things that worked to get more Google traffic. And they probably had no idea that they were getting caught up into this, what Google sees as like a scheme, right? A lot of different sites that are doing the exact same things. But if you paid attention to the backlash that Google was getting over the last couple of years, it's like, and even the backlash that the SEO community has gotten. I mean, you might have heard of the Verge article last year that made a really big splash in our community about the people that ruined the internet, and they're talking about SEOs. The general public doesn't love this kind of stuff. So Google is always adapting and responding to what its users like and don't like. So this probably was them just doing what was best for their own users.
Yeah. I think that's, at the end of the day, they're a business as well. And they need to be delivering on the promise that they're making to their audience in the same way that content marketers do, right? Something that you said earlier really, really appealed to me about how your strategy is not just about, kind of chasing wins and improving SEO at all costs, right? It's about defensive strategy. Can you talk a little bit about how you would do that? Because I think that is what our anonymous marketer is looking for today, some things that they can maybe do to future-proof their site for future updates.
Yeah, definitely. The first and most important thing to do that for whatever reason people don't remember to do is to read. I don't want to say read all of Google's documentation, because of course you should do that. And of course, that's a really daunting thing to do. It would take you a really long time. If you've been doing SEO like me for 14 years, you've probably made your way through most of the guidelines by now, but there's content guidelines and there's manual actions and there's web spam guidelines. There's link spam guidelines. There's certain helpful content guidelines, reviews. There's certain core documents and articles that Google has shared over the years that you just have to know by heart. You just have to, because you're inevitably going to get into a situation where you maybe find some kind of SEO opportunity or marketing opportunity that feels too good to be true. And unfortunately, the fact that it's getting a bunch of traffic doesn't mean that it's going to continue to get a bunch of traffic over time. So something I see all the time is people find loopholes that work temporarily. And this is what we saw in the last year leading up into the March 2024 update is, guess what? You could blast Google with ChatGPT content and they didn't really figure it out yet. It was another gold rush. This worked really well because, yes, like Google needs a time and data and engineering resources and planning to get rid of whatever spam technique is currently working on Google. So we had this like year-long gold rush where people were blasting AI content all over Google with not only no penalty, but with great success. And then sharing about it all over YouTube and Twitter and whatever.
LinkedIn. Ugh.
So, yeah. So it's like, you might have seen this by now, and people think I'm really boring or I'm a Google suck up or something because my whole brand is like, that's not going to work forever. Be careful, There's like there's 1,000 videos and articles of me being like, I don't know, read between the lines. I don't think it's a good idea. And everyone's like, you're not adapting with the times. And I'm like, I am. I just don't think that's a good idea. And then we get the March core update and Google's like, it's done, you know? So you see these things happen enough times where, listen, if you can experiment on a site, if you have a small site that you're like super okay with it churning and burning, I know a bunch of these people made tons of money over the course of a year. So maybe it's worth it. That's fine. Do that, whatever. I don't work at Google. Do whatever you want. I have clients and we have clients where we can't do that. We can't destroy our clients' websites. So we didn't really get into that, like, let's just like blast this whole thing with generative AI. I was very defensive the entire time, and none of the sites that we work on were hit. They couldn't be hit.
Yeah. Did you get some, I'd imagine some clients were kind of seeing some hot take LinkedIn posts or Twitter threads or YouTube videos and being like, hey, can we try this? Why aren't we doing this?
Yes. I think, we work at an agency with enterprise brands who have been doing SEO for a long time and understand more or less the rules of the game and understand most of the people that we work with have some type of SEO history, or maybe they worked with another agency in the past or something where they're like, we don't want to take any risks, So, we're not usually going to have a client that's like, let's try like mass auto generating all the content on our blog and seeing how many articles we can publish per month. Like they just, from a branding perspective, they wouldn't do it anyway.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of our clients, they want to hear from us. How can we use generative AI to scale what we're doing, or to create efficiencies, or to generate content ideas, which is absolutely something we're doing. So it's actually, people don't realize this, but it's actually the job of an SEO professional to protect your clients from algorithm updates. A lot of SEO professionals get their clients hit by algorithm updates, whether it accidentally or not, because in my perspective, they're being reckless. So this is what people don't seem to understand, I think. It's like, if you're putting your clients in a situation where their sites can get penalized or get removed from Google search, you're actually not doing SEO well. That's my perspective. But this is why we had to be on the defensive with a lot of strategies and campaigns over the last year, because it was too good to be true.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. What other kinds of defensive strategies and tactics would you advise putting into place, apart from kind of just being very skeptical of the quick wins and the loopholes?
Yeah, there's things like, it's always this tricky like gray area, because sometimes the things that work are the things Google says not to do, but they continue working for a while. So it's hard to like not do them. Like I'm thinking of local SEO. It's been this cat and mouse game in the local SEO space forever, where if you're a company that does, I don't know, you have, I'm thinking of like a drug addiction rehab that has 4 clinics in the Northeast, but you want to capture all the people that are searching for all the cities around the Northeast. You could theoretically make one page per city. This is something that has worked very well for many different types of companies over the years. They rank for that city. What happens when you are someone like me and my team who receive a lot of companies that have been affected by algorithm updates, and then you look at the site and you see, oh, they have 10,000 city pages, but they only have 4 clinics. That's strange, right? And it could be drug rehab, it could be anything. Multiply that by so many different types of companies that have done this. And more often than not, I see these sites get affected. And you don't always get a message from Google that says, we, hit your site because you have doorway pages or whatever they're called. You just have to reverse engineer that that's probably what happened. So then the next client that you have that's like, what if we built one page for every city? And we're like, if we're going to do that, we have to be really, really careful. So this is why experience is important in the industry, because you can make decisions that drive growth, but you can also make decisions that don't put your clients in a risky position. It's always a balance of both things.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Lily, we've danced around, well, not danced around, we've kind of touched on the issue of AI. Do you think there is a place for AI generated content in the SEO world? And how does it fit into things? How can you use it safely? I feel like is what I want to ask.
So first and foremost, there's, according to Google, nothing inherently wrong with AI content, and they don't care how the content was created. So they've been saying that the whole time. From the minute they started saying that, I was skeptical, to be honest. But because they also say, you know, you should label when the content was generated with AI, and you should be transparent when authors were used and not used, and when AI was used, and all these things that nobody is actually really going to do with their AI content. Most people are not going to say this article was written with ChatGPT, right? So what I don't recommend doing, and what I think now we have the data to support this statement, is don't recklessly use generative AI tools as a replacement for your writers. Don't do that.
Yeah, big plus one as a writer.
Yeah. Do use generative AI for creative purposes, for improving your writing, for enhancing your writing, for adding ideas. Like I think we all know by now, like these tools are incredible, and they can speed up the process. They can enhance and optimize and improve the content in many different ways. It can analyze content. It can analyze data. It can do all these really incredible things. I absolutely recommend doing all of that. I do all that day in and day out every day. It's really just about when you're replacing the brand voice and the content with generative AI, and when the user can start to feel like it doesn't feel like a human wrote it. Yeah. That's, I think, when you get into really problematic areas. Yeah.
Yeah, I've almost developed like an AI sense now. I'm like, just even in the most random places, like someone's LinkedIn comments, or I can be like, something smells a little bit funny here. Yeah, and I'm sure it's probably not just a writer's thing as well. I'm sure everyone can kind of sniff it out at this point, but it is. I hate it. I hate AI generated content in, without having any editing or without a human touch. It just feels impersonal, and it feels like as someone kind of coming onto a website or looking at a comment or whatever the case is, it tells me you don't value my time enough to have written this yourself or have edited this yourself. Anyway, that's my tangent. I'm gonna die on this hill. So speaking of AI. Good. Okay, great. That's great to know. I'm happy that I'm not out here by myself. Lily, the last thing that I wanted to touch on, kind of putting AI on the other foot, something that I've seen a lot of anxiety about in my circles is Google's SGE update, which, as I understand it, is going to land in May, which is basically an AI-generated answer to people's search queries right on the results page. Am I understanding this right? Is TikTok lying to me about what is going to happen in May, and what does this potentially mean for websites that rely on SEO to get traffic?
Well, first of all, it's news to me that TikTok has the secret release date for SGE. So
okay,
it's funny how misinformation spreads on these platforms. It's speculated that it will launch in May because Google I/O is May 16th, 17th, something like that. And that's when Google makes big product announcements, including last year, SGE. Last year was the first time they really kind of presented SGE publicly, and then created the Google Labs experiment that many of us are part of now. So people are speculating that this May will be when they launch it publicly. I don't believe Google's actually confirmed that. Google has started to test with the public, a public version of SGE that's very limited. I personally haven't heard of anybody or seen this new public version of SGE. I'm in the private beta test still, but Barry Schwartz, who does, Search Engine Roundtable, he was able to get some feedback from some of the new public users of SGE, and I thought that was pretty entertaining, because one of them was like, how do I get out of this thing? It was like a college student. I was like, how do I turn it off? I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for plagiarism and misinformation. So I want to turn it off. I thought that was hysterical because I was like, it's funny that like students are already skeptical. They're like, I don't want this thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
but
You could go away,
it'll be
please.
interesting to see how the public feels about it. Yeah. And so it's probably true that they're going to make some type of announcement in May at Google I/O. Maybe it'll be rolled out for more users, but they're going to have to roll this out in really small batches and continue testing because, again, I'm in the private group. I'm in the private test, like a lot of us are, and I can get it to generate offensive responses really easily.
Oh, goodness.
So we'll see what happens.
So work needs to be done. So we don't need to panic, and I can let TikTok know to cool their heels. Things are not super dire just yet. Yeah.
I mean, Google is responding to the OpenAI threat, and now it seems to be the case that whenever they make some big shiny AI announcement like SGE, their stock price goes up. So that's probably what's driving all of this. But there's a lot of really big unanswered questions. Like, I mean, the number one most important question is how will Google make money off SGE? Because Google makes money off ads.
Yeah.
So it's not just SEO that's at risk if people don't click on anything. It's also their
That
ads.
is such a great point, and something that I hadn't considered at all. And it makes me feel a lot safer as a content writer focused on SEO right now. Okay, brilliant. That makes so much sense. Lily, this is something that I always ask my experts before we close out the show. If you could speak to our anonymous marketer who is clearly tearing their hair out, it seems like they have been hit by the latest update on their website. If you could speak to them directly, what advice would you give them today?
Don't do anything drastic. Don't do anything that feels really like a silly waste of time because some SEO somewhere said to do that, like disavowing all your links, stuff like that. It's the thing you need to be focused on is building a brand. So in the short term, what does that mean? It means trying to get more traffic from places that brands get traffic. So, YouTube, Google Discover, Facebook, whatever, email, whatever. But by doing those things, hopefully you're starting to build a brand that people are searching for. And when Google starts to pick up on the fact that people are really interested in your brand, it has SEO benefits, So diversify your traffic sources, but think about like, am I doing something silly and reactive because it's for SEO purposes because I read it on some Facebook group somewhere? Or am I doing something that actually makes my users feel like they can trust my brand and they like the quality of my content. They like what I'm producing because that stuff will pay for itself with SEO benefits over time.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't take unnecessary risks and don't generate a mass of articles with AI. I've learned so much from this episode.
Yeah.
Including not to trust TikTok. Lily, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I've learned so much from you, and I'm sure that I will continue to do so. Lily is amazing on Twitter. Definitely check her out. She's got some great YouTube videos as well, which we'll link to in the show notes. And if you have any questions, SEO related or otherwise, marketersindemand.com/anonymous. You can leave them there. Lily, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Good luck to everyone.
That was great.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Anonymous Marketer. This show is part of Marketers in Demand, a network of podcasts featuring the world's leading B2B marketers. Unlock your full potential as a B2B marketer by going to marketersindemand.com.